President Obama's campaign is now encouraging big donors to write big checks to Priorities USA Action, a super PAC supporting his reelection. The super PACs doling out huge dollars isn't much of a story. The Republican primary is swimming in super PAC monies we've been reporting on. What is a big story, though, tonight is the fact that the president is doing this at all, because it represents a 180-degree shift, a total reversal in his prior position on super PAC money. Listen to what he said back in October 2010.
Thanks to a gigantic loophole, these special interests can spend unlimited amounts without even disclosing where the money's coming from. We don't know where it's coming from. We don't know if it's from the oil industry. We don't know if it's from banks. We don't know if it's insurance companies. Could be coming overseas. We don't know. They won't tell you. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. They won't stand behind what they do. This isn't just a threat to Democrats. This is a threat to our democracy.
President Obama, that was in October 2010. Here he is a few weeks earlier identifying some of the groups that he considered culprits and talking about how Democrats might oppose their influence without becoming just like them.
Every one of these groups is run by Republican operatives. Every single one of them, even though they're posing as nonprofit groups with names like Americans for Prosperity, the Committee for Truth in Politics, or Americans for Apple Pie. I mean, I made that last one up, but this is why, look, this is why we've got to work even harder. This is why we've got to fight their millions of dollars with millions of our voices. Voices who are ready to finish what we started in 2008.
So last fall, the president's answer to growing money power was growing people power. The Republican primary, however, shows just how much a difference a few big donors like Gingrich supporter, the casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, can make. They're writing multi-million-dollar checks to super PACs, and GOP super PACs have been massively outraising Democratic ones. We crunched the numbers from the Federal Election Commission. The big Republican-leaning super PACs have raised about 4 times what the large Democratic-leaning super PACs have raised. And that's how the Obama campaign is justifying its 180-degree change on what sounded until this week like a bedrock principle. Campaign manager Jim Messina saying in a statement, quote, "Our campaign has to face the reality of the law as it currently stands." He goes on to say, with so much at stake, we can't allow for 2 sets of rules in this election whereby the Republican nominee is the beneficiary of unlimited spending and Democrats unilaterally disarm. Republicans call it a flip-flop. Here's the picture the Republican National Committee sent out. A pair of flip-flops with President Obama's quote about how super PACs pose a threat to democracy, written on the sides of the soles, followed by the words, "Just kidding." Joining us now, Bill Burden. He's the former Deputy White House Press Secretary for President Obama, co-founder of Priorities USA Action, also CNN political contributor and former Bush Press Secretary Ari Fleischer. So, Bill, regardless of whether or not it was driven by necessity, whether it's the right thing to do or not for Democrats, is there really any other way to paint this than a pretty big flip-flop on the part of the president's campaign?
I think it was a recognition that the rules aren't exactly as he wants them to be, but he's going to play by the rules as they exist to make sure that the hundreds of millions of dollars that Karl Rove, the Koch brothers, the oil companies, the private equity guys have pledged doesn't wash over this campaign and the things that are important to us in this election.
But what's the difference between, playing by the rules and a change of position and a flip-flop? Isn't that the same thing?
I mean, the camp that this was a recognition that there's a set of rules that the Republicans are going to live by, and the president and his campaign are going to live by them too. Look, the president hasn't changed his position on whether or not he thinks that this is a bad set of rules, that the campaign finance system is broken. What he's saying is this is our reality, and if we want to compete in this reality, we better make sure that we're prepared.
Ari, what about that? What's wrong with the president saying, look, these are the set of rules, this is the reality we're facing, and we got to play by these new rules?
Anderson, I don't think there's anything wrong with super PACs. That's called free speech, and everybody's entitled to it. Here's the problem, though, with what Barack Obama's done. This is part of a pattern of behavior with Barack Obama that goes back to 2008. If you recall back then, he said he would accept public financing for the campaign just as John McCain did. And as soon as he figured out he could actually raise more money than public financing would get him, he flip-flopped on that issue and took unlimited money to fund his campaign. He also, because he wants to act as if he's changing Washington as a reformer, said he wouldn't allow any lobbyists at the White House, and he gave waivers for lobbyists. He said his staff wouldn't be allowed to meet with lobbyists and at the White House. So what did they do? They walked out the front door of the White House, across the park, into the Caribou Coffee House, where they met with lobbyists. And now this flip-flop on the super PAC idea itself. This is a super flip-flop. But worse than that, it's a president who has to act as if he is smarter, better, more moralistic than all his opponents, everybody else, while his pattern of behavior is to have words that are wind, but his actions are just like everybody else's in Washington. There's nothing reformist, nothing change-oriented about Barack Obama when you get to the heart of it.
Bill?
Well, I mean, you know, it's hard to take seriously criticism of reform from an administration that really didn't do anything to reform Washington at all. Now, the president actually did take steps to really reform the way things are done, to reform the information that people had about the administration, about the coming to visit it, about keeping lobbyist influence out. And he has pushed campaign finance reform during this presidency, not just on the campaign trail, but from the White House, working with Senate Democrats and Democrats in the House. But since it was blocked by an obstinate Senate Republicans, it wasn't able to make its way through.
But
the president's going to continue to push for reform.
To Ari's point, he did change his position on that when he realized he could raise more money without it.
The president has not changed his position. People who support reform have not changed their position. They've realized that the rules exist the way that they exist. But the president is continuing to push for reform, and he will continue to push for reform in a second term. It's Republicans who are stopping it. And while the president wishes that he could, by fiat, change the rules, he can't. As Ari knows, the president's got to work with the United States Senate in order to change the laws of the land, and he'll continue to try to do that. But as long as Senate Republicans are blocking that, he can't change the rules.
Ari, it does seem like no side, whether the Republican or Democrat, wants to admit that their candidate has flip-flopped. It's always the other candidate, or the other side, that's going to flip-flop for everybody else. When it's your candidate, it's a understandable change or facing new reality.
No, Anderson, I've said this before. I think one of the reasons Mitt Romney is in trouble is because he changed his position on abortion and on gay rights, and it doesn't come across as authentic. Barack Obama has a similar flip-flop problem. It's not only on those issues. When he was a senator, he said that we shouldn't raise the debt limit, and then, of course, he voted against it. And then when he became president, he said we have to raise the debt limit. It's a regular pattern with Barack Obama. And here's what gets even worse when you look at the president and the standard that he sets for himself. He said in 2007 about John Edwards' super PAC, "You can't just talk the talk," Obama told an audience during a campaign event. "The easiest thing in the world is to talk about change during election time. Everybody talks about change at election time. You've got to look at how they do and how they act when it's not convenient, when it's harder." That's what he said, and that's my problem with Barack Obama. He constantly tries to act as if he is somehow somebody special and different when he really isn't, and then to make it connect to policy. This is also why there's such a sense of frustration in dealing with Barack Obama on the most important issues of the day, how to reform debt and spending and reduce the debt. Barack Obama keeps, again, words are wind, making promises, saying things, and his actions go 180 degrees against
Bill,
it. Because his entire presidency, it seems, is about maneuvering and tactical positioning to protect and preserve his brand, not to follow through on reform.
Bill, very briefly, do you think now that the president, though, is going to send out people to speak at the super PAC events and the like, that is going to make a huge difference in terms of the fundraising?
Well, I think it remains to be seen how big an impact it will have. But just for starters, Ari, that's President Obama. I'm sure you would appreciate that when President Bush was in the White House, people calling him president. But as for the practical, results of what this will mean, I think it'll take a little time to see. I don't think that in the next couple of days we'll see a huge spike, but I think that over the medium and the long term, we'll see just how much folks are really willing to get involved, and progressive donors and folks in the community decide that this is an important part of making sure that the president is reelected.
Bill Burton, appreciate your time. Ari Fleischer as well. Let us know what you think.